You don't need to understand all the different language models. You don't need to understand how many tokens are in Claude 3.5 or what that even means. But you do need to understand what AI is as a general blanket term and how AI can help you in your role today. Because the problem and the truth is, within the next few years, almost every aspect of our society will be impacted and have AI layered into it, particularly marketing. This is one of those cornerstone areas of society and technology where AI is really making strong inroads. And if you haven't taken that time to understand how AI can help you be more efficient and effective in your role today, you're going to be at risk of being replaced by somebody else who has taken that time.
You are listening to Power Marketing with Kevin Lee. Kevin and his agency Did It have helped thousands of businesses win through superior marketing, as have his books, articles, speaking engagements, and the E-Marketing Association Power Marketing podcasts. Here's Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kevin Lee with the E-Marketing Association. My day job is I run Did It, a 50-person digital-first marketing agency, but we do a lot of traditional work now as a result of 11 M&A deals where we even do direct mail now, so which has gone digital. I also run a nonprofit called Giving Forward and Truth Nutrition, which is a brand that I run marketing experiments at. Super excited today to be with Mike Allton, who is the Chief Storyteller at Agorapulse. So let's start with that and give us the elevator pitch of Agorapulse and your role there as Chief Storyteller.
Thanks, Kevin. It's a pleasure to be here. Agorapulse is a social media management solution. So if you, your business, or your agency, you're running social media more than a few channels, or maybe you got more than a few people running social media, then you're obviously going to want a tool. You're not going to want to be bouncing in and out of every single social platform and having all those tabs open and trying to juggle all those usernames and passwords. So use a tool like Agorapulse. But what makes Agorapulse amazing is that it helps you connect the dots between the work that you're doing on social and the actual business impact. A lot of us who've been in social media for years, like myself, I'm not going to date myself too much, but we look at likes, we look at followers and that kind of stuff because that's the endorphin generating stuff that makes us feel good. But that doesn't move the needle for the business. What moves the needle is traffic and conversions of some kind. Agorapulse helps you move that and track that. So I'm the chief storyteller. I run a lot of podcasts so that I'm talking to different kinds of customers and prospects and elevating their stories about how they're feeling and seeing success in the digital marketing space, particularly social media. And hopefully Agorapulse is part of that journey in some way.
So one thing a lot of opinions surround is this idea that you can reuse the same creative assets in different channels. Like some people will say, oh yeah, you can use the same thing on Insta that you put on TikTok, or you can use the same thing on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it as you could if it's short form and fits the format. And then there are other folks who are like, oh, no, you got to really custom create every asset to the channel and the followers that you have on that. So is there a common wisdom there? Are there ways to, make use of the same piece of content in multiple ways without having to go back to the drawing board and slice it and dice it, re-edit it and repackage it?
It's funny because I think both sides are correct. And the reason they can both be correct at the same time is because they're coming from different perspectives. If you're listening to this and you are a content creator, that is your job. You are building your own presence and your own brand, and you're working with sponsors and partners and that kind of thing, or you're selling affiliates, then you should be customizing your work to absolutely be the best that it can be and an ideal fit for every platform that you're talking about. Create TikToks natively on TikTok. Create Instagram Reels natively on Instagram and use some of the tools that are native to those platforms to help those individual pieces of content stand out, even though it might be the same vertical video that you're starting with on each one of those platforms, but you're going to want to use different music, different effects, different stickers, and that sort of thing. If you're a business, forget everything I just said, because you ain't got time for that. If you're a business, you absolutely should be leveraging the fact that a lot of the same format types exist on almost all the platforms. I was talking about TikTok and Instagram Reels a moment ago. That's a vertical video format or a portrait size video. Well, guess what? That works on YouTube as a short if it's under 60 seconds. It can certainly go to Facebook as a reel. You can post it to Pinterest as a vertical video. And as recently as this year, LinkedIn is favoring vertical video, and you can share it to threads and TikTok. So as a solopreneur on the side, I've got a podcast on the side, AI and Marketing Unpacked. I am always taking vertical clips from that podcast and sharing it to all those channels. Now, would each one of those videos perform a little bit better if I had and took the time to customize each one of them for those platforms? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't have that kind of time. I'm a solopreneur and I work full time for Agorapulse. So we're doing the same thing with Agorapulse. We are repurposing content wherever we can. And one kind of subtle element of what you just asked is reusing the same content. That's something many businesses and even content creators don't do enough of. If you've got a post that you shared to X or Threads or someplace else 30, 60, 90 days ago, and it did really well, share it again. If you had a post that you shared 30, 60 days ago and it didn't do well, but you think it should have, share it again. No one's going to say, hey, I saw that post 2 months ago. No one cares. Most of your followers didn't see it. Because when we share content to social media, the reality is only a fraction of our followers see it. So absolutely, repurpose, reshare. Think about how you can maximize your time to get the most of your content out there.
Yeah, that's a great point. And some folks would even say that that applies to email marketing as well, because obviously the chances that a person sees your email are pretty low. I guess my personal opinion is probably change up the subject line and like do enough editing so that just in case a person happens to see it twice, they don't feel like this looks really familiar.
Well, one of the things that I do, I have a Sunday newsletter, and the format of my newsletter is I've got some segments and some clips that I'm including in there. I include my podcast every week, but I also have a long form article that I write every Saturday for my Sunday newsletter. On Thursdays, I take that exact article and I publish it as a blog post. And so I'm repurposing that content, using it to multiple channels. I also resend to non-openers on Tuesdays. If you didn't open my email on Sunday, I'm resending it to you on Tuesday, and I just changed the subject line to be in case you missed it. And I saw someone push back on this idea, and they were looking at it totally wrong because they were trying to say that you're looking at our open rate, and I'm looking at my open rate on a Sunday, and then my open rate on Tuesday, and I'm adding them together and coming up and trying to double my open rate. And that's not it at all. It's a combination. So if there were 6,000 people that didn't open my Sunday newsletter, I'm sending that to them. And my newsletter service combines the numbers. So I'm still only sending to a combined total of subscribers, 44,000 subscribers. But the total number of how many opened them, that's my open rate. So I'm not doubling anything. And I'm certainly not sending them spam. But it's a great way to repurpose that material. Make sure that, again, more and more people see what you're creating.
Yeah, another great point or a great element of a point you made earlier about reutilization of content and cross-posting potentially with a slightly different abstract or a slightly different description is that certainly within the SEO practice that did it, one of the biggest topics now is how do I make sure that the AI actually prefers me when it gets asked a question? Because the search engine results page isn't disappearing quite yet. But an increasing number of people are starting to just ask a chatbot a question. And so they may be asking ChatGPT, Claude, or Gemini a question, and it's a completely different algorithm. So you don't get a search engine results page anymore. You get a single answer. It's a winner take all for that particular query in many cases. I mean, maybe Perplexity is a little bit of a hybrid, but other than that, for the other chatbots, it's sort of this winner take all, and people do not understand how the LLMs work. And this idea that a lot of content that's out there is sort of framed slightly differently, or it has slightly different context, or has been re-synopsized in a different way, each of those feeds the LLM, right? So you're increasing your odds the more your content is syndicated from the perspective of showing up as the result. And so the more that people are talking about you and you're talking about yourself and you're co-creating content and it's being out there syndicated. It used to be called barnacle SEO back in the day. I don't know if you remember that term, but the idea was at that point when you had a search engine results page that, okay, great, my domain's ranking pretty well, but there's still 19 more links out of 20 that I would love to show up in. This idea that you would do digital PR and co-create content elsewhere that with folks who have good ranking potential, that increased your chances of showing up. That same best practice influences the AI. And I just don't feel like enough people realize that, right? That don't just think about it like social media in a silo, content creation in a silo, blogging in a silo. The reality is that content can live on in many ways.
Absolutely right. It's a completely different way of thinking about search and search intent. It's more similar to those who were thinking about how to optimize for Google's knowledge graph and those knowledge
Sure.
panels that were showing up, right? Where you're really thinking about not just keywords, but you're thinking about the actual questions that are being asked of your target audience and making sure that you have answered that question literally on your property in a way that's accessible by robots and AI bots and that sort of thing, so that's the information that can be surfaced. So if someone's asking a pertinent question to your business or industry, hopefully it's your answer that's put at the top with a link to your property for more information than anybody else's.
So I know that a lot of the content you're creating is about the use of AI in social media from a content creation perspective. And there are different opinions from both the search ecosystem and the social media ecosystem as to where the line should be drawn between human generated content, humans generating content inspired by AI, or AIs generating content on their own. And is there a consensus now within your ecosystem on that?
Oh no. Oh no. There's definitely no consensus yet. The entire reason I started the podcast, AI Marketing Impact, was to not only talk to experts in these fields and brands who are creating really innovative solutions in AI, but also as a platform to help marketers understand that AI is not hype. It is a transformative moment in technology in history, and it is not going away. And we need to prepare ourselves. And that's why there's all this discussion about how we should use it, how it can be used, what we should and should not do. I had a great conversation with Mitch Jackson, who's the streaming lawyer, and we talked all about the IP, the intellectual property, and copyright law that's really non-existent, but starting to be formed, right, around AI generated copy. And it was a very cautionary tale because we were talking specifically to marketing agencies who may be using generative AI tools to create assets for their clients. And depending on how those assets are being used, they might be putting themselves in jeopardy. So to give you an example, let's suppose that you and I are working together and I create an ebook for Did It, and Did It's going to put it out there, and a competitor takes it and publishes it as their own ebook. And if I used AI to generate that ebook, I have no copyright claim on that ebook. And you as the client, maybe you didn't even know that I used ChatGPT to build this ebook, and you're trying to sue a competitor for stealing what you thought was your IP, and you've got no legal leg to stand on because there is no precedent at the moment that says an AI generated piece of anything can be copyrighted and set up in court, because the one precedent was a photograph that a chimpanzee or a monkey took of itself. And the legal courts at the time said, well, the chimp can't defend itself in court, and therefore it cannot own the copyright for this photograph. And that's the precedent at the moment. Legal legislation is leaning on. Things may change. But those are the kinds of things that we need to be aware of and thinking about as we're leaning more and more into how can we use AI? How can we use AI to shorten the amount of time that we're spending, particularly on repetitive tasks? That's where I really like to focus my time and suggest other marketers look at. What are you doing every single day that's spending a lot of your time that you need that thing to be done, but you'd rather not be doing that thing, right? I spent a lot of time preparing for podcast interviews, but I have the guest information, I have their LinkedIn, I've got what they want to talk about. I can feed all that into the AI, and instead of me spending 2 hours thinking about them and what they're interested in their background, AI can spit out 10 questions and topic ideas in moments and dramatically reduce the amount of time I'm spending on that.
Right. Well, one fun thing about the AIs, I guess, fun in quotes, is the hallucinations.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I come across a hallucination where it's a head scratcher. It's like, wow, I can't believe it probabilistically connected the dots in that way. That's completely false, right? And I don't know if you have any fun stories about like where you came across AI hallucinations. The one that I came across was, you know, uh, there was some interesting litigation relating to did it ages ago, where there was a frivolous lawsuit, and I sort of asked the AI what happened in that, and it got it completely backwards. As a matter of fact, it came out much better in our favor than the actual case did. And I was like, well, I wish I could go back and actually use the numbers that the AI thought. But do you feel like they're getting better at reducing the hallucinations for these AIs, or have you seen any interesting AI hallucinations?
Well, they're absolutely getting better. The models are getting bigger, they're faster, stronger, more powerful, and less hallucinatory the further on we go. And we're recording this on August 2nd. Within probably a month or two, we'll have GPT-5 out, which will be even bigger and better and stronger than GPT-4o. But what's interesting is I find that I can also eliminate hallucinations myself if I put the proper constraints in. So my fun example is I do all these podcasts, and after I do the recording, I feed the recording into tools like Descript and other sources and get the transcript. And then I take that, I put it into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT helps me build out all the promotional copy materials that I'm going to create. I built a custom GPT, so I just give it the link, and it spits out posts and quotes and other kinds of information. An entire LinkedIn newsletter is written by ChatGPT, and I say that in the newsletter. When I first started doing that, several times I caught it completely making up quotes. I mean, just absolutely, these things did not appear in the text. Or sometimes it would quote me. I'm like, I'm the host. I don't want to be quoted. I'm trying to shine a spotlight on the guest. So I had to tell it that. I had to just explain, look, what I want you to do is find 3 to 5 really interesting, salient quotes from the guest, not Mike Allton, the host, from the guest, that's literally taken from the transcript. And now it's flawless. It does it every single time, and it picks really, really great, impactful quotes that I'm able to use in quote graphics and all kinds of things. So giving it those guardrails, that context to say, this is what I want you to do, nothing more, nothing less, will help you tremendously.
So for folks who haven't had a chance to sort of learn the nuances of prompt engineering, are there any tips that you have for them as they're using it for, let's say, marketing ideation purposes or marketing related brainstorming?
Oh, 100%. First of all, treat the AI like an intern. I'm not the first to have said this. Many of the folks I've talked to, like Katie Richmond and so on, have promoted this same concept. And that's because you wouldn't just go to an intern, walk up to them on their first day and say, write me a blog post about X. You wouldn't do that. You'd have no expectation that they'd know anything about your business or your industry or your audience to be able to create anything that's worthwhile. They probably could write a blog post, but it's not going to be usable. So treat the AI like an intern who needs to be taught, who needs to be educated and shown and onboarded who you are as a brand or an individual, if you're working with them as an individual creator, who your target audience is, what your business is about, what you sell, what do you talk about, what's your tone of voice. We often talk to businesses about creating a single document, a source of truth that has all that information, your brand voice, your style, your ideal customer profile, all that information, so that you can simply copy and paste that into ChatGPT or whatever model you're using before you start to ask it for anything. Now, you could also build that into a custom GPT where it's stored in memory, but the document's convenient because it's just a copy and paste. Then you can get into what it is you want. And then it goes back to the point I was making before, where the more guardrails and context you can provide it up front, the better. So you teach it who you are as a business. And then let's say you want to create a piece of content. Well, you say, look, I want you to act as the world's greatest copywriter because we're going to work on a landing page and I'd like your help. And then you tell it step by step what you want it to do, which is the other final tip, is that the AI models, at least today, work best if you work step at a time. If you try to go from a blank page to a completely finished, highly converting landing page, somewhere in there the AI is going to go off track, and you're not going to be happy with the results. But if you take it in a chunked down style, right? Where you think about, well, what would I want to come up with first? I want to know what my CTA is and work backwards. I want to have an outline for the landing page. I want to decide what the elements are that I'm going to include in there, because a lot of that you don't probably want the AI to make up anyways, right? If you want to include testimonials from clients, as we just said, the AI, here's a helpful tip. All of the AI models today are programmed to be helpful. They're programmed to do, to the best of their ability, whatever it is that we ask them to do, which is different from an intern or any other human being. If you ask me the same question 10 times, I'm going to get annoyed, Kevin. I'm sorry. I'm like, look, dude, I already answered that 3 times. Stop it. But we can do that with an AI, can't we? We can say, give me 10 title ideas. And then it gives you 10 title ideas. And you can say, you know what? Give me 10 more. Give me 10 more. Give me 10 better ones. And the AI will happily and cheerfully give you 10 more ideas every single time. Human beings aren't like that, but it's important to know that AI is like that, which means if you don't specify things like using a quote from a transcript or let me give you the testimonials before you insert them into the page, those kinds of things, it'll make them up. Because it's just trying to be helpful. So keep that in mind.
So, are there things that you've seen or in the various LLM roadmaps that make you particularly excited or scared for the next 6 months?
Well, I'm definitely not scared. I'll tell you that. I'm in the camp where I am 100% excited about the potential for artificial intelligence, how not only the chat models themselves, these frontier models, as Paul Ratzer calls them, but how it's being integrated into our existing tools and all these new tools that are coming out that are powered by AI. I think what I'm most excited about is the concept of AI agents, where you have little mini AIs, basically little programs that are able to work with us and engage with each other and combine different tools, different processes, different tasks in ways that we can't today. So, for instance, if I'm going to create a blog post, well, I need to write the blog post in my editor of choice, and then it's got to go to WordPress, and then I have to have an image imported into it, and then it's going to be published. There's steps and there's different tools along the way. Eventually we'll be able to talk to an AI who'll be able to combine a lot of those processes together. If you're in sales, for instance, and you're talking to a prospect on LinkedIn, you might have a Salesforce integration, you might not, you might have a HubSpot integration, but as you're talking to that prospect, you can talk to the AI and let the AI know, hey, remind me to send a follow-up email to this person tomorrow and update the Salesforce contact record for this contact, and that I did this conversation or whatever. I'm not in sales, so I'm making this up. But the idea is that these agents are going to help us, right? They're going to save so much time because it's like me just talking to an assistant and having that assistant do all the tasks for me in multiple different places. They're on the cusp as we're recording this in early August of 2024, where some of this is starting to come out. We're starting to see this in some platforms. Within the next really 3 to 6 months, these agents are going to be everywhere.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've also sort of gone down that rabbit hole of the sort of AI agents. And, what early on, people may be a little bit reticent to give those agents buying power, right? Use my American Express card to buy this ticket at Ticketmaster if you can get me a seat at this price or less, right? But there's all sorts of really interesting scenarios, right, where it could either work well or it could actually go very wrong if the AI does in fact get confused. But this the whole idea of human queues, waiting in line to get tickets or waiting in line. Or taking a chance at or getting a reservation, right? Like, keep checking back to see if OpenTable has opened up a reservation at Le Bernardin, because I don't want to have to go back, right? And so even if the platform creators at OpenTable had never thought to create the waiting list, well, the AI agent will actually keep going back and knocking on that digital door to see, is that table available? And the implications of that at scale are, mind-bending.
Yeah. And to your point, there are so many real-world consumer-based use cases for AI agents. You can talk. I'd like to go to Italy. next summer. And you just tell the AI agent, I'd like to go to Italy next summer. And if it's an assistant, like what we're seeing with Apple Intelligence and that sort of thing, who knows who you are, knows where you live, and that sort of thing, it can start to bundle together packages. Well, here are the flights from St. Louis, Missouri, where I am, to Tuscany, and here are your options, and here's what you would do in a 7 day trip to Italy, and pull all that together for you. And then to your point, ultimately start to make some of those reservations and purchases for you.
Right. On the social media side, do you feel like the pendulum will swing back to human created content? Because it's sort of like there was like the early generations of AI when they were like touching on photorealistic, and you sort of had these like the first photorealistic AI stars that were not human, etc. Do you feel like things are starting to be like, okay, well, there's nothing special about that. It's not unique. It's not scarce, right? Whereas Mr. Beast is scarce. There's only one Mr. Beast, right? And so do you feel like the content pendulum potentially swings back into human and human talent?
I agree that there's a content pendulum. I don't yet think it's on the backswing yet. I still feel like I'm seeing, and this is very anecdotal, but I feel like I'm seeing more and more still AI generated imagery, video, that sort of thing. In fact, I was working with a tool last week, RenderNet, that allows you to create AI generated imagery that could use your face or somebody else's face. So you could have an AI avatar or just yourself, and put yourself in all kinds of different poses and scenes. And then they just released a video creation tool where you can use that same avatar that you've created for images and put them in a video, and you give it a little bit of a script, and it'll read with your face and your lips syncing that content. And that's the kind of thing we're seeing more and more, because it's still not quite accessible yet. Right. Everyday businesses, everyday content creators aren't yet using all these tools. We don't all have access to Sora and these kinds of really high-end video tools. So I'm still seeing that pendulum going to more and more AI generated content. But you are 100% right. I believe within the next, I don't know, year or two, at some point, it will swing back the other way. And people will be like, "Ah, I really prefer to see authentic content." And it'll be a slow drag the other direction, because it'll be a lagging indicator. We'll see decreased engagement. We'll see decreased followers and other kinds of social metrics that lead us to believe, oh, these posts aren't resonating with our audience as much as they used to. Because the problem is, most people won't tell you, I don't like that image because it looks fake, or whatever it is that they're thinking of. I mean, there's trolls, of course, but generally speaking, you don't get that kind of qualitative feedback as a social media marketer. All you get is, at the end of the month, did you hit your numbers or not? And that's up to you to look back at the content you posted and why. So that's where I'm seeing things at the moment.
But let's drill down a little bit on authenticity, right? Because that's an area where, influencer marketing may not be quite as sizzling hot as it was a couple of years ago, but whether you're going after the mega influencers or even using micro influencers down at your general customer level, um, the buzzword seems to be authenticity, right? And if something doesn't pass the smell test for authenticity, it can actually backfire. We won't mention any brands and ad
Right.
campaigns that potentially went sideways as a result of using influencers that didn't feel quite authentic, even if they were, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's still so many ways that things can go south if things are perceived to not quite be on brand or not quite be authentic. And so, how do you advise brand marketers or marketers in general, even B2B marketers, as they start to think about, I want to amp things up on social media. I want to take advantage of both the creativity of a creator, but also their reach. But I want it to pass the smell test. I want it to be authentic.
Well, that's the real crux, isn't it? Because for years we've had this issue with influencers where they're human beings, and therefore they're independent, they're creative, and it's impossible for a brand to script what they're going to do. And there's always that risk that they might say or do or create something that's not on brand. And we've seen plenty of issues where that has happened. So I understand the attraction to creating, frankly, an artificial influencer, whether it's video, imagery, or whatever, and saying this is our avatar, this is our representative of our brand, and allow them to be the voice of the brand. Because if they're artificially created, then the brand can control everything they say it, how it's come across. And there's a lot of appeal to that. Honestly, frankly, it's also probably less expensive than paying for macro or mega influencers. So I think to cross that bridge, you have to be 100% authentic that this is an AI generated influencer. Like I mentioned, I do a LinkedIn newsletter that ChatGPT writes. And I say that in the newsletter. This was created by CLU, my AI assistant, based on the transcript of the interview that we're talking about. And I think too many brands have started to embrace AI influencers without being very transparent about what it is that they're doing. And the problem is a lot of the technology today is advanced enough that you can create pictures, even video of people like I just talked about with RenderNet, that is pretty indiscernible from real life people. I was doing a roundup of podcasts on a particular topic on AI and marketing. And there was one podcast that I found, and I was starting to include it in the roundup, and I noticed it was the podcast host's picture on every episode, which is a little unusual. Most podcasts they'll do a picture of the guest on the episode. So that's what first caught my attention. And then I noticed that every picture was this host who was stunningly beautiful woman, and she was not only in different outfits and different poses, but this I noticed they were less and less realistic. Like they were real, but like on an adventure kind of a thing. And then it dawned on me, she's not real. This isn't a real person hosting this podcast. It's 100% AI generated, but they did not say that anywhere. I'd already read the description and even listened to half an episode. So it was 100% a what we call a faceless content where there's not an individual human representing the brand, but they didn't disclose that. And so I didn't include it in my roundup because I didn't know, I wasn't comfortable, you know, moving forward with promoting that kind of a brand and content. I didn't know how my audience would react to reading that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And of course, once you start to think about um, the latest generation, right? In the first generation of sort of, let's call it image and video based AI, Geico could basically create a gecko that you could interact with potentially online where it could even answer your policy questions for you because easy enough to recreate the gecko and they don't have to worry about licensing fees. They own the gecko, right? But now, Progressive could decide, oh, maybe we want to create an interactive flow, right? And well, it's up to them in their contract with the actress who plays Flo if she's comfortable with becoming, a digital avatar or representing the brand in policy related conversations online. But it's not outside the realm of possibility now. Whereas, even 6 or 9 months ago, it was sort of like on the drawing board, but people weren't quite ready to say it was possible. But based on, your recent interaction with some of these tools, it seems like it's right around the corner.
Yeah, and I love your example because if you look at Geico, they've had a gecko as their spokesperson for I don't know how long, years and years and years. Nobody ever said, that's not a real gecko as they're staring at their TV and watching their commercials. Nobody ever had a problem with the
Right.
fake computer generated spokesman that they've had. So it's not new as a society, but we weren't being duped, right? Nobody again thought that it was a real gecko in these commercials. Obviously, it's a fake gecko. So I think as a society, we're fine accepting artificially generated spokespeople and influencers and those kinds of things as long as we know that it's artificial and that we're not trying to be duped into thinking we're talking to a real person.
Absolutely. Well, there's another interesting twist. It doesn't necessarily relate directly, but I find it fascinating in that there's this changing dynamic particularly in the broadcast industry as it relates to, I guess you'd call them anchors or video journalists or whatever, that sometimes they're just a talking head because they don't actually even necessarily report news. But, it used to be that the power was in the brand of the broadcaster, Fox, MSNBC, CNN. But sometimes these people who have their shows, right, they end up with a social media following that is equal to or potentially greater than the parent organization. And it completely changes the power dynamic when it comes time for renegotiation of contracts, but also this idea, but between, okay, I'm speaking as me on Fox, or I'm speaking as me on MSNBC versus I'm speaking as me over here on X or Twitter or Insta or TikTok, right? And it sort of really blurred the lines. And some of those influencers who were created as a Frankenstein monster by the broadcaster, right, who was paying their salary and has now created this monster, they're like stuck in this conundrum. Like, okay, the Frankenstein monster is loose. What do I do?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the unique changes in society. Developments is probably a better word. Developments in society, because we have these broadcast channels that are elevating these individuals and creating real personalities that are coming into our homes every afternoon or evening, and they're in a position of authority, right? We are told by the brand, you should trust these people, and we're putting our logo behind them. And then they go on social media, and not all of them, obviously, most of them are wonderful people, but some of them have obviously either made some mistakes or done some things, maliciously on social media outside of that brand, and created, to your point, these problems for these brands. And they've had, I think, very little choice but to let them go and part ways with those personalities.
Absolutely. So, what should we have covered in today's conversation that we haven't?
One thing I do like to do is reassure people particularly when it comes to AI and marketing, that maybe you haven't started yet. Maybe you haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about these things, and that's okay. You might feel like you're behind, and transparently, you are. But you can get caught up extremely quickly. You don't need to understand all the different language models. You don't need to understand how many tokens are in Claude 3.5, or what that even means. But you do need to understand what AI is as a general blanket term, and how AI can help you in your role today. Because the problem and the truth is, within the next few years, almost every aspect of our society will be impacted and have AI layered into it, particularly marketing. This is one of those cornerstone areas of society and technology where AI is really making strong inroads. And if you haven't taken that time to understand how AI can help you be more efficient and effective in your role today, you're going to be at risk of being replaced by somebody else who has taken that time. I'm not the first and only person to have said this, but I'm repeating it because I think it's important for people to understand that. That's why I pivoted so hard, honestly, just, I don't know, 8 months ago. I haven't been doing this for very long. I've been in social media marketing for longer than I care to admit, but AI has been relatively new for me because I had this kind of wake up moment where I realized, not only is my role potentially at risk, but these people, these colleagues that I've gotten to know and care about for years, they're all at risk too. So I'm trying to help them and trying to help all of you listening today. Make sure you're thinking about how AI can help you in your role.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. I mean, everybody has their AI epiphany at different times, and sometimes, if you're like me, you sort of have five or six of them at different times based on different things that you get exposed to. Actually, just invented something recently. I'll mention it to you offline, which was sort of one of those like AI powered epiphanies. And that's part of what makes it fun to get up every day, right? Is marketing always moved more quickly than most other industries, and now I sort of feel like it's got rocket fuel behind it.
Oh yeah, one of my fun sayings is, because I've been in social media for a long time, and people have always complained about how fast social media moves, and I've always said, yeah, it doesn't really move as fast as you think. It just kind of feels that way. But then AI came along and said, hold my beer, we're gonna move really, really fast.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Mike, for joining me on this conversation about AI and where we are in August 2024. I'm sure we'll be able to do this again next year and have a completely new set of conversations.
100%. Thanks so much for having me.
Kevin Lee's Power Marketing is available on all your favorite podcast networks. Kevin loves helping businesses excel at marketing. Having marketing challenges? Just like Santa in The Miracle on 34th Street, if Kevin can't help you, he'll know someone who can. Find him on LinkedIn, subscribe, or follow.